have nothing for this. Ciel's route is maybe the most boring thing I've ever read. This took the whole year to read. I had to force myself to finish this in the last quarter because of how long I was putting off reading this route in service of doing literally anything else. I'm not being hyperbolic. It put me to sleep multiple times when I was reading in bed. So much of this route is either A, the general plotting seen in Ark's route, which isn't a fucking barn burner to begin with, or B, fucking just the most sawdust chewing conversations between Ciel and Shiki. It is impossible to imagine the human that stayed engaged during almost any of this. I've never been so bored by the written word before. The problem is that it isn't bad, it's just uninteresting. Ark's route was filled with many parts that were bad or objectionable, and that makes for a significantly more engaging time. Ciel's route can barely muster anything worth remembering. I wish it was worse, because then I would have something to come on here and talk about. I don't want to admit it, but Shiki being a negging, woman-hating domestic abuser is vastly more interesting personality than whatever the fuckload of nothing happened here. And Shiki isn't the only one at fault. Ciel has no personality. Negative personality, if you will. You couldn't pick up her swag on a scanner. I know there's this meme out there of Ciel and Curry, and after playing this round, I think I see why that cropped up. The closest thing to a characteristic Ciel has going for her other than generic love interest is that her favorite food is curry. It is the only interest or attribute or flavor the character has outside of her narrative arc, which isn't particularly interesting itself. So what you are left with is a boring route featuring boring characters and a boring prose that fails to paint the world with any interest because the can of slop it's charging its brush with is premium grade mold resistant interior-exterior paint and primer boring. And then it has the gall to be almost interesting. Spoilers and content warnings for sex regarding Ciel's route in case you somehow fucking could ever care. Skip to this time code to avoid all of that. So the main difference in Ciel's route is that after the gang defeat Roa, Roa pulls a quasi-reincarnation into Shiki's body. This is where Tsukihime pulls its classic move of introducing something interesting and then severely lacking the execution to follow through with it. As Shiki begins to battle the inclusion of Roa into his mind, he is gripped by violence and madness. There is this engaging push and pull of Shiki trying, but also failing, to fight off Roa's murderous intent. Being stuck in the head of a character with another character stuck in there too rackets up the tension. Seeing Shiki fighting a losing battle until he snaps and can no longer control his actions is the single most dramatic part of this route. And then it just kinda stops. After Shiki assaults Kohaku, he's still sharing space with Roa, but all that maddening interplay goes away. The story just has to move on to other things, like the confrontation with Powered Ciel, and there isn't any time or focus on how internally fighting with Roa continues to haunt him. It's deflating because it really felt like this was the turnaround point, where Ciel's route was going to kick into next gear, and instead it reverts back to a story about these two flavorless pale cracker crisps sharing descriptive adjectives that can be counted on a hand or two. And to make sure the Roa insanity is undercut, Ciel then hops on top of Shiki because his clock has been stuck at midnight ever since he was possessed. Maybe the funniest and most cleanly removable H scene I've ever experienced. It's not a good H scene because of course it's not a good H scene, but God was I laughing. Once you see how it's meaninglessly sandwiched between two greater plot points, you can practically imagine yourself at the table of an editorial meeting where someone is asking why this had to be included. Anyways, then it ends after a while and you get to watch these two spineless homunculi be together in a route that I believe was supposed to be this thing called romance. It's just the drizzling shits. I was elated to be done. That's a wrap on both near side routes, the routes that are the two main heroines. One is about as misogynistic as possible, and one is as boring and flaccid as possible. I fail to see how anyone could have ever formed a fandom around this, but whatever. We were all stupid teens once. Hopefully these Far Side routes are much shorter so I can bang them all out next year and then award Tsukihime the lifetime achievement version of the Stubbed Toe Championship. Thank God we have Melty Blood.